and also to 980 WCAP. Both of those organizations deserve to have my microphone on. There we are. So I say we are about to begin our thanks to Chelmsford Telemedia, who's here and says everything is okay, and 980 WCAP, who's also broadcasting this. I will say that the debate will be replayed many times on Chelmsford Telemedia, and it will be replayed from 7 to 9 next Wednesday night on 980 WCAP, where I hope everybody gets it. Good evening. I'm Sam Polton. I'm welcoming you to a 25-year tradition. The Chelmsford Democratic Town Committee usually hosts the last town debate, a nonpartisan election dedicated to good government, as we are, but we also have another organization in town dedicated to good government, and that's the Republican Town Committee. And a few weeks ago, we got together and decided that in the interests of everything, including the candidates' time, we would combine this last debate. So, again, my pleasure welcoming you. To let you know how things will go tonight, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce one of our moderators for tonight, Joe Reddy. A round of applause for Joe.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Joe Reddy. I am a member of the Democratic Town Committee, and I'm your moderator for tonight. I'd like to thank Brian Latina, who will be a co-moderator with me on this event. I would like to take a minute to ask everybody to stand, honor our flag, and salute and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our democracy is made possible through our free and fair elections, which are secured by the dedicated military members of our U.S. Armed Services. We owe them a debt of gratitude for our freedom, and we thank those that serve and have served and the families of those service members for their sacrifices. I'd like to thank Chelmsford Telemedia and WCAP for covering tonight's debate. I will have my co-moderator, Mr. Brian Latina, come up and explain the format. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and our esteemed Sam Polton. Sam and I and one newspaper reporter and one candidate were at the town hall after the primary election. That was it. Nobody else was there. And that's when we sat down and said, you know, it's time for us, the Democrats, Republicans, to get together, especially in the town. It's a nonpartisan event when you're voting. And I appreciate Joe Reddy being here as co-moderator. What we're doing tonight is looking at 3 debates, one for school committee, one for planning board, and then finally select board. We'll give you enough time to introduce yourselves. I think we said 1 minute for an introduction for each candidate. And then we're going to give you at the end another minute to ask for a vote and kind of summarize what you said in this part of your debate, that section. If you get a question that you don't quite answer in the feeling of the opinion of the moderator, if it's a non-responsive answer, we may ask you to expand on that. So when folks write their questions, please do it fairly. Write a question that's not a dig. We are looking at them first before they come up here to the moderators, and they will be then passed on to us. There are no questions in advance. Our Republican and Democrat teams didn't sit down and concoct questions. So the audience here is very important to the rest of the town. The town is responsible for paying all their taxes and living in this town, and you're responsible to ask the questions that they most would like to hear the candidates, both the school committee, planning board, and the select board. So start writing your questions. There's little 3x5 cards, pencils, pens, and then pass them off to the end, and we'll have some folks picking them up, bringing them up to us. We're going to get 1 or 2 minutes for the candidates to answer the questions, and we're going to have a session where if there's any, are there any news media or newspaper folks here? Seeing none, I think the only one is everybody gets it over at the radio station. So Sam may ask a question.
We're going to allow more questions from the audience.
Yep, okay. We'll ask more questions from the audience then, so it's important for you to start scribbling. As time permits, we're also going to ask the candidates to ask a question of the other candidate or candidates, and we'll look for a 1-minute response on that. So hopefully we'll have plenty of questions and plenty of responses. And again, at the conclusion, you'll have 1 minute to summarize. Our townwide elections are nonpartisan, and we're very pleased that the 2 major parties in town have arranged to come together to provide this opportunity to show the town where you stand, where you, as candidates, stand on the topics of their interest. And I would like to make a side comment that last year we first started in town elections for mail-in voting. And at the end of the voting, 1 vote made a difference as to who was on our select board. 1 vote. So your votes do count. Speaking to the folks here and our audience at home, your vote is very important. And if you do the mail-in ballots, please consider bringing them in. Last year, 65 of those ballots that you mailed in never made it in on time. The day after is not good enough. So if you're going to vote by mail, get it in with plenty of time. Give it 4 or 5 days. Otherwise, drop it off in the box outside Town Hall or bring it up to Town Hall and hand it in. If you vote at the day of the election and you took out a ballot, it's very important for you to come into the Town Hall and hand it in directly if you wait till the last day. And you can certainly vote in your precincts as you always have. Thank you very much. Any other?
Yeah, I just want to add for the audience, the election will be on April 2nd. Voting is one of your most sacred rights, and we ask everyone to exercise your right to vote. We ask the voters to take the time to watch this forum, research the candidates, and vote for the candidate that best fits the position. So with that being said, we will get started.
Could we have the 2 candidates for school committee come forward? We will determine the order of open and close
You want to start?
in our traditional methods. Come right here so they can all see that we haven't reversed this.
Grab a chair.
Rod, you can sit right there.
Questions,
All right.
audience?
I have written a number down on this piece of paper. I am thinking of a number between 1 and 10. What number do you think I thought of?
3.
I like prime numbers too. I'm going to pick 7.
7, says Mr. Cleve, and 3 is the number that I wrote down. So you will start.
Okay.
All right, you can begin. You have a 1-minute opening. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you to both town committees for hosting tonight's debate. My name is Diana LeBeau, and I've been a resident of Chelmsford for nearly a decade. I'm the mother of 2 children who currently attend Chelmsford Public Schools, an active member of the Chelmsford Mothers Club, and a 5-year representative on 2 Chelmsford school councils. I've also been a career educator. I began in the classroom teaching middle school. I worked in youth development, led school and district change work across New England, and most recently have worked to support Massachusetts educators with professional learning opportunities. I would love to represent the families and community members of Chelmsford on our school committee to combine my broad experience with education and my deep commitment to Chelmsford and our schools. If Chelmsford voters are looking for a candidate with rich experience, honest and open communication, innovative ideas, and advocacy for our educational system, I hope they'll learn tonight that I'm the person to vote for. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Rodney, your turn.
Hi, Rod Cleves. I'm not going to wait till the end. I'm going to ask for your vote right now. I want to be the first out of the chute. I came to Chelmsford about 30 years ago. when I married a woman who had a nicer house than I did here. I was living in Maynard. I was very active in Maynard town governments. Moved here, wanted to be active, but we found ourselves dealing with foster care, and that took up all of our time. So now I'm back. We put, I would guess, somewhere around 15 children through the Chelmsford school system. Most of them were our foster children, but we also had 5 children of our own that we did. And I also taught at middle school. I had one semester teaching woodshop, but I also teach at the college level. And my degree is in education and history. So that's who I am. I'd like your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we will start now. We're going to ask questions of the candidates, and I will start with Diana. The question from the audience is, 60% of the school budget is spent on the schools. Do you think we are spending enough, too much, or not enough?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I believe that 60% includes the money going to Neshoba, which at this point is not under the purview of the school committee. But about 50% does go to the schools. And one thing I can say about that is that there's got to be something that's going relatively right, because almost unanimously every year, town meeting passes the budget, which includes the school budget. And we have excellent schools. They're one of the reasons I moved to Chelmsford. That's not to say that shifting times don't call for a really close reevaluation of what we're spending our money on. And I think I'd like to, rather than look at the bottom line in an isolation, I'd rather look at what we're spending our money on, make sure it's the right things for our schools and for our community. And that would be my priority from day one, is to look at where the money is going and how we can use it even better.
Thank you. All right, Rodney, we're going to have you answer the same question. 60% of the town budget is spent on the schools. Do you think we are spending enough, too much, or not enough?
I'd say we're right on target. Of the 317 school districts in the entire Commonwealth, we are number 160, dead center. A lot of other communities are spending a lot more money. Some communities are spending a lot less. We have a fairly complex school system between the maintenance of our buildings, our grounds, and as Diana said, we're not responsible for Neshoba Valley, but we certainly send money to them. I'm also a big fan of fiscal responsibility. I've handled multi-million-dollar budgets, done my best to work through them, call out through dead wood, if you will, but so far I looked at the school budget and I didn't see any dead wood. I couldn't imagine taking someone and saying, we're going to cut your salary by $1,000. I hated if someone cut my salary just to save a little bit of money. But I do like the long dollar. I'd rather spend $5 up front that'll last me for 10 years than 10 years of $1 spending. So sometimes you have to take that into consideration. But yeah, I'd say we're right on track with the budget.
We have to learn how to do this. Rodney, I'm going to go back to you for this one so we can go back and forth. A parent cannot buy a game day ticket at the high school gate with cash in order to watch their child play football. Is this a school committee policy that you're going to agree with, or is the athletic director in charge of payment policy? Is this a reduction in revenue to the third-party payment company approved by the school committee, and does it offset losses due to cash theft in the past?
I have to admit, Brian, I've only heard of this problem from one person. But if it's certainly widespread, I thought cash was the king of the land. And if you can't buy a ticket at the gate, there's something wrong. I'm not sure how much that comes under the purview of the school committee or the football boosters. I'm not honestly sure about that. But I would do what I could to change that. If your child is playing, or if your next door neighbor's child is playing, or if you just want to go see a game, what does it matter? Pay your bucks and get in to see the game. If someone's turned away because they didn't think to buy in advance, or let's say a relative came in from out of town, they want to go see their nephew's game, no, I think that's patently unfair. And I would, if that's something the school committee can take care of, I would certainly look into that. Hopefully change it.
So if I could, you do not agree with a non-cash policy at the gate?
Do not agree with non-cash. Yeah, no. Pay cash and get in, all right?
Okay.
That's all there is to
Okay,
it.
thank you, thank you. And Diana?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I've actually experienced this going to some of the high school games with my children. You know, I think the reason that this came, and first of all, I do not think it is directly under the purview of the school committee. I think this was a decision made by those who oversee the sports and perhaps the superintendent. That said, I think the school committee can have a role in opening up the discussion. It is in the purview of the school committee to supervise what the district is doing. I personally think that allowing folks to be able to enter with the money that they have on the day of is the better move. That said, I would want to study the issue more and understand it. I do think there were reasons that went into the decision to remove same-day cash payments that had to do with ensuring the safety and environment of sportsmanship at the games, and I'd want to look into that as well.
And the second part of the question, Diane, if I could, the third-party payment company obviously gets a piece of
Sure.
that funds. Is that something the school committee should be concerned about? We would get less revenue to the town.
Yeah, no, I think anything that takes revenue away from the town is something that deserves some scrutiny. That said, I do think enabling options for payment, including sometimes ones through a third-party company, only ensures that more people can be engaged in our games.
Thank you. And Rodney, I didn't quite ask that question. Third-party revenue goes to the outside of the town with the school committee, in your case.
When I was running for another position in town, I was asked that very question, and I would agree with Diana. I would want to look very carefully at what's the benefit of the third-party company, because, you know, and why are they taking some of our revenue away? I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, for all I know, we're losing $100 a year. I don't know about it, but we would have to look into it. We would have to advise other people to make a better decision. I still don't understand why the boosters had to give it up.
Okay, thank you.
Third party.
All right, we'll go to do Rodney last time. Yeah. All right, so we'll start with Diana. Teaching and learning has been changed since COVID. Students' feelings of well-being, safety, and overall emotional health is a concern for all communities. What are your thoughts as you lead Chelmsford Public Schools in this era?
Yeah, so this is something that has been a big focus when I work with teachers in Massachusetts. I worked with teachers during COVID, supporting them in the transition to working in an online context. And I've worked with teachers since COVID and heard the concerns that come from them about the shifts that are happening in our schools. I've also heard from my fellow parents, particularly those with kids a little older than my own, about the serious mental health crisis that is happening. It's in Chelmsford and it's nationwide. So some of the things I would want to do right away is look and make sure that we are really focused at the levels where there's some serious concerns. I hear a lot from the middle school level. Making sure that we have the social services that we need, working with those students, making sure that teachers are trained in how to address the kinds of social concerns that come up in school. But I also think there's a lot that we can do as a community to shed light on the services and opportunities for support that are already there and can partner with the schools.
Thank you. Rodney, I'm going to ask you to answer the same question. Teaching and learning has changed since COVID. Students' feelings of well-being, safety, and overall emotional health is a concern for all communities. What are your thoughts as you lead the Chelmsford Public Schools in this era?
Well, this almost gets into a political question. I'll try to avoid that. I know the WCVB presented a study done by one of the colleges, and I'm going to say it was Babson, but I could be wrong, that too many kids, especially special needs kids or of any type, lost a lot of years in education. I know one in particular lost 2 full years of education. And then as we came out of COVID, had to virtually start all over again and catch up. I have not heard that the students were in fear for their safety. I've heard that the staff was in fear for their safety. But I think the whole thing was a mistake, and I would not want to see it again. I'm glad we're coming out of it. I'm not sure the best way to drag us along into, post-COVID future, but I would like to see less online training and more in school. But we did learn one thing. We can do distance learning if we have to.
Okay,
And maybe we need to work on refining that if it comes up as a contingency.
thank you.
And fortunately, we have about a dozen questions. I'd like to see if we can get them all in. So we're going to give us 30 seconds on the next, at least the next couple questions.
Speed round.
Speed round. Speed round. You'll appreciate the second one. Many towns are facing, and Diana. Yes, Diana. Many towns are facing huge fiscal challenges next year. Is Chelmsford prepared?
I think this is definitely a topic that is being discussed very avidly. I know at the tri-board meeting, or the tri-committee meeting, this came up. I think the way that Chelmsford can be prepared is to continue to look very carefully at every budget issue, make sure we get people who are going to be focused on what is most needed in our town, elected to positions, and not take our eye away from the prize when there's an opportunity presented to us.
Thank you.
Go on, but I'll stop.
And Rodney?
I could go on too, thank you. I've seen the agenda for the Finance Committee, and they have it tough. They really do. But I think they're doing all right. Just like when I suggested statistically the Chelmsford school system is midpoint in spending in the state, I found that Chelmsford as a whole, the Chelmsford budget, is about midpoint in the state. So it's the old adage, if you got someone upset with you and someone happy with you, you got to be doing something right. And we're right in the middle on that. So yes, it's challenging. There's no question about it. Everything's more expensive and everybody's making less money. But we're all in the same boat. We got to rise with the rising tide and sink with the lowering tide.
Okay, thank you. Second question in kind of quick succession, again, 30 seconds, please. Scholastic News has been providing schools with inappropriate, transgender, explicit sexual books to our children in schools. Would you keep these books out of Chelmsford's elementary and middle schools? And Rodney, can I start with you?
The short answer is yes. I had a really nice letter from a concerned lady last week, and all she asked me was, am I in favor of banning books? And I'm not sure in what vein she's asking that thing. No, I'm not a book banner. I think any adult should be able to read any book that was ever published. If someone took the time to write it, they should read it. But we do have to be concerned about our kids. Age appropriate is the buzzword there. No, nothing sexually explicit. I cannot support that.
Thank you.
In the lower grades.
And Diana.
I am not in favor of banning books. However, I am in favor of teachers and educators using their professional judgment to determine the books that are appropriate to have available in their school and classrooms. I do have concerns whenever companies are selling their products at our young people, but that concern to me is not focused on the specific issue that you named, because I think there's always things that we need to be looking for, making our judgments as parents and educators about for our young people.
Thank you. This question is kind of in the same line. Across our nation, great books from the American literacy tradition, such as The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and To Kill a Mockingbird, are being challenged and removed from our public school libraries. What is your position on this? So let you expound. Diane.
Okay, sure. Again, I am not in favor of book banning. I think we learn when we read. I think it is the job of the educators to help guide students in thinking critically, and it's up to parents if they want to talk to their children about books that bring up issues that are uncomfortable or controversial for them. That said, I know the school committee's job is not to monitor what's in our libraries. I know our job is to monitor what's happening in our schools, And that would be something that I would be looking forward to having those conversations.
I heard recently that some school banned Treasure Island. Don't know why. You know, these books are, I referred to on the last question about sexually explicit material in inappropriate age groups. That's different than To Kill a Mockingbird. To Kill a Mockingbird addressed a lot of different things. I don't have enough time to get into it. This could be a 2-hour discussion. But no, there are some classics that just, we have no business removing them from the school. Absolutely not.
All right, on a different subject, one of the audience members asked, what is your position on getting a new school building? And I'll add to that, what building would you like to see improved if you did? Go with Diana to start.
Sure. Yeah, this is a hard 30-second issue, but I will just say I am in favor of exploring the new building, particularly since there is potentially state money to support it. I do think that Parker is the right school to look at replacing, both because of some serious concerns with the existing building and because enhancing what we offer at Parker enables us to also meet some serious issues of overcrowding at the elementary level. That said, I like that this is a multi-year process because it gives us time to look very carefully at the designs and the possibilities and ensure that we're making savvy decisions about programming as well as facility.
Thank you. Rodney, I'll give you a
Some things
few extra seconds.
Some things can't be answered in 30 seconds. Right now, I was in contact with Superintendent Lang about this, and what they're talking about right now as an exploratory option, and everything's still on the table. You got to understand that nothing's been decided. We haven't even applied for the money yet. We're talking the building committee within the school is still talking about possibly building a brand new facility on our property outside of Parker, and then revamping Parker after having done that. I don't think right now Parker's not on the chopping block, but it is hopefully going to be revamped. But that could change. That could very easily change. They were talking about keeping McCarthy the way it is, maybe spruce it up a little bit because it is designed as a high school, and it's very conducive to that. But right now, I think
time's up.
It's on track.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the extra seconds.
Sure.
Thank you. And Rodney, if you'd start with this one. What is your position on the required vaccinations for school attendance?
I'm against it. There you go.
Beautiful. And Diana?
That is typically controlled by state policy. That said, I am in favor of vaccinations being a requirement for public safety reasons if they are vaccinations that are recommended by the state's agencies for disease control.
Thank you. And Diana, would you start, please? How will you support teachers and their voices as stakeholders?
Thank you. Love that question because I work with teachers all the time on growth, improvement, and leadership in my day job. I think one way I would do that would be the same way that I would lift up other voices of stakeholders, which is to actually offer opportunities for interactive forums at the schools, at each school. There's no reason why the school committee can't go directly to the schools and offer opportunities to discuss the issues that matter. I would strongly encourage teachers to come and have those conversations with me and with others on the school committee.
Thank you. And we have one kind of an obscure question.
Did you want me to answer that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, I'd be happy to skip.
That's what we do best.
It's a good
I
question.
sign here.
You know-
How will you support teachers and their voices as stakeholders, Rodney?
Well, many of our teachers are also parents in the town, and the reason I wanted to run for school committee is to be a proper and a conduit between the parents and the school committee. You're all welcome to my home address, not address, but home phone number and email address. But this also gets into the liaison positions, which I think is the most important part of being on the school committee. Who you're going to outreach to and what organizations you're going to be with. Of course, we're going to support the teachers. We want to listen to them. And I think there should be some time in the school committee meetings that we have time for the teachers to come in and voice their concerns.
All right, we're going to move to candidate questions. So we'll start off with Diana. You can ask Rodney a question.
What are your thoughts on the ramifications of the MCAS ballot issue for Chelmsford as a district, depending on the outcomes?
You're referring to whether we continue with MCAS or drop it?
The current ballot issue is potentially a vote to eliminate the graduation requirement of the MCAS.
To be honest with you, I'm undecided. I never cared for MCAS before. I've seen many instances of very good students who just couldn't do well with it, but and they're denied their diploma. I'm not a fan of special. The word escapes me. Testing that's the same for everybody, because we're not all the same. In fact, if I look out into this audience, everybody's different, and we all couldn't pass the same test if we had to. So I'm not. My knee-jerk reaction is that I'm not in favor of it. I'm not in favor of MCAS as a requirement for graduation, but I would look into it and possibly deal with modifications.
Okay, thank you. Rodney, we'll have you ask the question of Diana, please.
All right. Diane, I had a specific question for you, and this is a hypothetical. So if with the current state that we have, what would happen, or how would you deal with, let's say, 100 new students coming into town, not all on the same day, but in the same relative time frame, and we suddenly are mandated to take care of 100 new students and bring them into the school? With luck, they'll range in age all the way across. Let's give you that much. But how would you deal with that many kids, and how do you think it would impact, or how would you prevent the impact from our existing students with that many new people coming into the various school buildings? You know, it's not only space, it's the money, everything else.
Yeah, so I think that is a very real question. We have a growing population, especially at the elementary level, that is going to keep growing in the coming years by most projections. It's one of the reasons why I do support looking into this new middle school project. Now, in terms of actually reacting in the moment, my first thought when I hear of new people joining our community is that we need to look at making sure that we consider them part of the community. I don't love the feeling that, you know, because some folks are new, they're not as deserving of an excellent education in our district. That said, I think I would want to make sure that we looked at how we were distributing the services that we're offering in our schools, how we are supporting the educators in our school of accommodating a larger population. And I would want to make sure that we found opportunities to get as efficient as we could in areas where we could afford it, so that we could put money into making sure there's enough teachers so that classrooms aren't overcrowded, and that schools can accommodate all the students there.
Thank you.
We now have 1 minute for a closing statement, and please, at the end, it's not just the folks in the room that are voting, it's the people at the other end of that camera, so ask for a vote if you wouldn't mind. And we started with Rodney, so Diana, if you would give us a minute.
I think you did start with me, but I'm okay going.
That's true.
Thank you to both parties for hosting tonight's debate, to Rodney for engaging in this dialogue, and to everyone listening here and at home for being an informed voter. That's critical. I hope you've heard tonight that I'm the best candidate for Chelmsford for this incredibly important role. I'm ready to hit the ground running on day one, yes, always listening and learning, but also someone ready with feedback from parents across the community, insight about what works in this district and in other districts across the region, and tools to use as an educational leader. Our school committee can be more than just a place to enshrine policy and approve a budget, but it's democratically elected. It's one critical place where we can elevate the concerns and hopes of our community. If you support me, please check out my website, tell your friends, share your ideas, and most importantly, please vote for me on April 2nd. I want to be your voice in building the schools our community and especially our children deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. And Rodney?
Well, first off, thanks for hosting us, and thanks, Diana. I want to say hi to my sister Lorraine and my daughter Ariana out there. And so when I graduated from South Portland High School in Maine, I was near the bottom of my class. And somehow I managed to go to a few college courses and night school. And somewhere along the line, someone blessed me with a doctorate degree. I'm not sure why. But the education to me comes in all different forms. Some people are in advanced placement classes. Some people are muddling through it, but they'll get through it later. I hope you vote for me. I have a feel for education. I have a feel for the budget in the town. Most importantly, I want to carry your voice to the school committee, even if it's not necessarily official. At least I'll listen to you. And your concerns as parents are the most important thing to me. And we'll get it done. That's all I can say. The school committee has been running pretty well, and I don't have any issues with the current superintendent. And part of why I want to be on the school committee is to make sure nothing goes awry.
Thank you, Rodney. All right, we want to thank our school committee candidates here for coming out. Thank you for the round of applause. We will ask them to move along, and we will now have our planning board candidates come up.
It's about 5 minutes to set up.
Good job, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's have one more round of applause for the candidates and for our two moderators as we get the planning board to come down here. I'm Sam Polton. You're tuned to 980 WCAP and Chelmsford Telemedia that is providing this debate. And I apologize that circumstances beyond my control limit my participation, but I do have the honor of letting the candidates choose who will go first, second, third, and fourth. So if you'll take your seats very quickly.
Slow. It's a Republican in me.
Once again, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10. And I will begin here.
9.
9,
6.
6, 1,
4.
4. The number is 5.
So we have a 6 and a 4.
You gotta buck up.
Rock, paper, scissors.
I was 6.
You were 6 and you were
4.
4. So, once again, I'm thinking of a number, 1 to 10.
Who's these two?
6.
10.
4.
1 minute, which is
You're first.
Pat, ask for the audience.
Once again, our two moderators are Joe Brady and Brian Latino. And this is a joint debate sponsored by the Republican Town Committee and the Democratic. Joe?
Who did you start off?
Oh, we are starting off with
Chris.
Mr. Lavalley.
So this is the Chelmsford candidates for planning board, and we will start off with Christopher LaValle.
Thank you. Thank you to Chelmsford Telemedia, WCAP, the Republican and Democrat committees. I have lived in Chelmsford now for over 12 years with my wife Linda and our 2 children. I have a bachelor's degree in biology from Providence College, a master's in biology from Boston College, and a master's in business administration from Boston College. Until recently, I was at Novartis in the R&D-IT department for about 10 years as a project manager, and then as an organizational design and improvement. I started becoming involved in Chelmsford as a town meeting rep about 8 years ago. Since then, I've been on the IT Capital Advisory Committee and the Capital Committee. As a resident, I spearheaded zoning changes to help define distribution centers and warehouses. And now I've really enjoyed serving on the planning board for the last year. I hope to continue with a successful campaign for another term. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to Paul McDougall.
Hello. Thank you very much, Joe. My name's Paul McDougall. I grew up in this town. I went to school at Westlands and made my way through McCarthy and then Neshoba Valley Tech, where I became a mechanical contractor. I have 2 children, a freshman and a senior at Chelmsford High, and I deeply care for this community, and I'm here to protect it. So I've learned a lot the last 3 years, and I think there's a steep learning curve with this particular board, and I feel like it would make sense to keep that going. So,
Thank you. All right, we will move on to Deirdre Conley. Thank you.
Hi, thank you all for being here. Thank you to the Democratic and Republican town committees for sponsoring this civic exercise. I think it's important that we all meet and discuss our positions on the relevant issues. I'm a physician in town. I moved here 23 years ago with my husband and 4 children who all went through the school system, and I became involved in the, interested in the planning board when there was a development proposed for the center of town that I didn't agree with the plan as it was abutting the wetlands, part of the floodplain, very dense and in the historic district. I became involved in an effort to mobilize against that development and was successful. And then I decided to run because I wanted to impart fairness and consistency to the process. I'm interested in listening to the participants and the stakeholders and following the law and making a fair determination for these complex issues that really concern everyone, that being zoning and density and growth. Thank you. I ask for your vote.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to Doreen Deschler.
Thank you. Good evening, Chelmsford, and thank you for the Democrat and Republican town committees for holding this. My name is Doreen Deschler, and I've been a member of the Chelmsford Committee since 1989. I have 2 children. 2 graduated from Neshoba Tech, and I had 2 children graduate from Chelmsford High. I volunteered for the Chelmsford Little League and the Chelmsford Pop Warner. I decided to run for the planning board last year when I saw things happening in my town that I did not approve of. The River Neck Road project was the straw that broke the camel's back. I want to be the voice of the people. I want to be the voice for the residents of Chelmsford. I will always work for the residents. I will always be accessible to you. I believe that there are projects that not only the residents and the abutters need to know about, but that the whole town needs to know about, such as warehouses being built in residential areas and the MBTA community. I will always fight for the residents, for the small businesses owners in Chelmsford.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to our first question here. We're going to keep it to 30 seconds. Please try to be within time. The first question, we'll let Doreen start it off, and we'll come down the line. What do you see as the most important change to make if you're elected to the planning board?
Listening to the residents. We need to ask the residents what they think when something gets proposed to the town. We don't seem to do that. We just go ahead and do whatever we think we want to do. And then they're the ones that elected us. They elected us with we work for them. So we need to listen to them and listen to what they want us to do.
Thank you. Deirdre?
Well, I respectfully disagree about the listening to the residents bit. I feel quite strongly that it's my job and that I have been doing my job in trying to get as many inputs as possible and trying to listen quite carefully to the input from the neighborhoods and the community and the stakeholders. I think it's important that we, again, follow the law. And I think ideally, the zoning code needs to reflect the town's concept of itself. And if there's disparity between those two things, then we need to try and better align the zoning code. So I'd like to work on the zoning code as a priority.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Paul.
And that's where I would start, is our zoning conflicts. We have a lot of different zones through the, if you were to look at the map that we have for the different types of zones, residential, industrial, there's a lot of conflict. And I think in the next term, we should be addressing these issues proactively.
Thank you. All right, Christopher.
I agree with Paul and Deirdre. The zoning conflicts where the uses in town are not matching the actual zoning, but also outdated bylaws and definitions. The outdated bylaws and definitions that we have in the books right now are a problem for a lot of these projects that we're seeing. They're not up to current standards. They're not addressing current needs and issues in our town. So we need to update those.
Thank you. All right, we'll have Deirdre start this off. The question is, there can be a gap between initial and final site plans presented to the planning board. What is your comment to ensure, or your commitment to ensure ADA compliance does not fall through the cracks?
That's a very good question. Well, the site plan review, the distance between the initial and the final plan, it's a negotiation. We have, peer review, we have the DPW reviewing for compliance with the code, and it's ultimately the responsibility of the building inspector, in my understanding, to enforce the ADA zoning laws. We do have counsel advising us on all site plans and zones and special permits that we approve. And, it's very important, I find, to mind our P's and Q's. And I feel like there's instances where I have found things in the site plans that are not consistent internally. And, there's a lot of people reviewing the site plans, but.
Okay. We'll leave it at that.
Sorry.
Ernest timekeeper made a woo-woo.
30 seconds, please.
Well, we gotta go a minute apiece for the next one.
Okay, all right, fair enough. We go 1 minute. So Paul, we'll have you answer the same question. There can be a gap between initial and final site plans presented to the planning board. What is your commitment to ensuring ADA compliance does not fall through the cracks?
I think we're looking at all aspects of the site plan, but the ADA specifically.
Specifically.
I think in the end, it does come down to the building inspector to make sure that it is compliant. But getting there, we're reviewing everything in front of us. And unless it's a modification, it usually stays as planned, typically. In my experience, it doesn't change that much. Although the restaurant right now in the center is making a change right now, and we're in the middle of that right now.
Okay, thank you. Do you want me to repeat the question for you, Chris?
No, it's okay. Since joining the board for the last year, I've been really a stickler on seeing the final plans before we make a decision, and I'm going to continue pressing for that. We often reach out to town departments and groups to make sure that we do have their eyes on the plans as well. So I would encourage the board to continue that outreach with the ADA group to make sure that their eyes are on these plans as well and make sure that we're not missing anything.
All right, thank you. Doreen will let you answer the final question. Do you want me to reread it for you?
No, I basically agree with Chris. I think that He's right. I don't know because I've never been on the board and gone through all of this with them. I've been to some meetings, I've watched them, I've watched how they do it, and they do go through, and they go through the police department report, the building inspector's report, and all that. And I agree with him that we should make sure that they stay with what they're saying and don't make too many changes. If they keep making changes, then there's something going on, and we can't let that happen.
And I think we've all had a chance to answer that one. If we could expand on it a little bit, you get letters, the zoning board gets letters from all different departments. Would it be helpful to get one from the Disability Commission? And Chris?
Yes, absolutely.
quick-
And I think I mentioned that in my answer, that I would welcome, and in fact, I will be requesting that we add the commission in that request.
Thank you. And Paul?
I would agree with Chris. I would, definitely that group, obviously, but you do have to limit who has input in every plan, I guess.
But in terms of a letter, would
Yeah,
it be a
that-
simple request, whether they get one or not?
Yeah, definitely, especially where the public is involved.
Okay. And Deirdre?
I think that the process is always open to improvement. And typically we make changes when we notice that something hasn't been quite right. For instance, we started asking for the Historic Commission's input when we were dealing with a plan that pertains to a historic structure. And I think that now that we've had this plan in the center where the parking was an issue, and we've seen that the ADA can be an issue, I think it's incumbent upon us to revise our workflow and add the ADA into the mix.
Thank you. And Doreen?
I think it would be very helpful to have their input because we need to know what their needs are. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And next question, if I could. The MBTA doesn't run through Chelmsford, yet we're being forced to rezone our property per the Attorney General and Governor's last comments. It's the law is under litigation until October. Do you support voting at town meeting to rezone, or do you feel waiting is prudent because the zoning is so hard to revoke once it's law? And if I could start with Doreen at the end, please.
I believe we should wait. Actually, I believe we should just vote no. The law is that an MBTA community that fails to comply with this section shall not be eligible for funds from, and it lists all of the funding that you're not eligible for. Okay, and then it says the Executive Office for Housing and Livable Communities and Consultants with the Executive Office, that's the only thing that they can do to you. They keep saying that they can fine us, they can sue us, they can take away our zoning. That is not true. The only thing they can do is take away the funding from those things.
Thank you. And Chris?
So the law has a deadline, and it is a state law. If we wait, we pass the deadline, and we have immediate consequences from the state government. Grant money is withheld, and we get named in a lawsuit by the state. So yes, I do support it. We are considered an MBTA adjacent community because we border North Billerica and Lowell, which are MBTA direct communities. And MBTA direct and adjacent communities are part of this law with slightly different requirements.
Thank you. And Deidre, please.
Oh. Well, I think that it's important that we are fiscally prudent, so sources of funding that the state provides for projects, we shouldn't relinquish our opportunity to participate in them. And I also agree with Chris. I mean, it is a law, and it is working its way through the courts, but at the end of the day, it's a law, and we've been advised by counsel that we need to adhere to it. And certainly, one of the mechanisms to enforce that adherence is withholding funding, but also the Attorney General has indicated and is within her wheelhouse to sue towns that don't abide by the law. And I think it would be not fiscally or otherwise prudent for us to break the law.
And Paul, please.
I feel Chelmsford is in a very good position with the MBTA zoning. We have decided on a couple areas of town that the likelihood of being built out is basically zero, in my mind. So we don't have a fight with the state. We're gonna abide by the law, in my mind, and we have a good plan, and I'm confident in that plan.
Okay, and if I could expand on it and give just a quick yes/no answer. The law itself is what's under litigation, not the enforcement of the law. Chris, if the Attorney General and the Governor were a court, it would be different, but they're not. The court actually determines what the law is and how it's enforced. Could you comment on that?
Sure.
Just a quick answer from me.
It's not a yes or no question, but the legislature has passed a law, and the governor signed the bill into law. So therefore, it is a law that we must follow until the court says that it is unconstitutional. If the court does find that way, we can always remove the overlay.
Okay, and Doreen?
According to the state law, it was signed by Governor Baker and the legislators, yes. But it doesn't say anything other than the fact that they're going to take away funding for grants, which we might or might not get. We are not guaranteed these grants.
Thank you. And Deirdre?
There's a lot of precedent for the state governing zoning, and they give us power to do, to some extent, local zoning, but there's a number of laws that have been enforced since the early 60s that pertain to limitations, restrictions, other parameters for zoning. And so I don't think that this is unconstitutional. I think it's there's a lot of precedent for this kind of law.
Okay. And Paul, please.
I think we have bigger issues coming from the state. This was the first attempt to produce housing in our state because we're short housing. I went to a meeting last week, and they're talking about EDUs, accessory dwelling units, across the state being a right for single-family homes. That would be much more impactful for the town of Chelmsford. So if we're going to fight the state, that's the fight I would pick.
Thank you.
All right, we'll start with Paul again. In your capacity as a planning board member, how will you preserve the character and integrity of the town?
Good question. I know what the town looked like when I was a kid, and I know what it's kind of turned into with some of the bigger housing developments, like the big square boxes. What we did with the MBTA zoning is we narrowed that down to what they call the missing middle, which is a lot less dense than that, and that's like one thing we did. We wanted to keep the character of the town, have control of the way it looked, and not have the big boxes.
Thank you. We'll go to Deirdre.
I also am not a fan of super dense housing. I think we have a bit of an issue that seems to be what the market is bringing to us. So I think it's incumbent upon us. We have, we require special permits for any multifamily building. And I think, we've restricted the height to 3 feet. We're trying to, use our site plan review to impart the characteristics we're seeking. And I also think we should be looking at tweaking the overlay districts in a way that gets us closer to buildings that were of the type we're seeking.
Okay, thank you. Doreen?
Yeah, I don't believe in density anymore. Chelmsford can't support it. We are at capacity with sewage, we're at capacity with schools, we're at capacity with water. We just can't afford it. We cannot comply because we can't accommodate these buildings. We just can't accommodate them. We don't have the resources to accommodate these buildings. And it's just not in Chelmsford's best interests. It's just not what Chelmsford's all about. We need to keep Chelmsford, Chelmsford, and that's small.
Okay. Christopher?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question was, how will you preserve the character and integrity of the town?
Thanks. I think we need to be more proactive with our zoning bylaws. We need to make sure that those reflect the projects that we want in town. We don't develop projects ourselves. We can only regulate projects based on our zoning bylaws. And if they're outdated, if they're not reflecting what we want in town, then our hands are tied. So I think we need to be much more proactive in looking at those bylaws and making sure that we are attracting the projects that we want.
All right, thank you.
The sequence is always kind of fun. I'm going to start with Chris this time. Many people feel that the town is pretty much filled up and they don't want any more building. Their houses being stuffed in wherever they can fit. What is your opinion?
I would agree with that. I think that we're completely built out. We have spaces that could be reutilized in better ways. And I think that that's one more example of where we can do better with our bylaws. We can improve our overlays to attract more of the right types of projects into specific areas. As part of the MBTA process, we were identifying a few areas in town where, as a board, we want to take a closer look at in terms of better overlays for the center of town to attract more areas like that.
Thank you. Deirdre, please.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the
I
question?
can. Many people feel that the town is pretty much filled up and they don't want any more building. There are houses being stuffed in wherever they will fit. What is your opinion?
Well, when I moved here 23 years ago, I was told this town's built out, and there's been, I don't know how many hundreds of units built since then. There's a bit of a delicate balance between, owners have the right to develop their property to within the zoning, so I agree with Chris, as I've said before. I also feel like planning, which many don't understand, is a relatively passive project other than revisiting our zoning bylaws. And I would like to see kind of more of a global look. One of the things I love about Chelmsford is the villages. I don't know what time that was.
Pretty much.
Are we done? Okay. Thank you. Paul,
repeat it?
please.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we've been talking about overlays for villages and keeping the character of the town. And I'm looking forward to that next process with our committee, with our planning board now, to see what we can do about that.
And Doreen, please.
Can you repeat it, please?
Yes, Doreen. Many people feel that the town is pretty much filled up and they don't want any more building. They're putting houses being stuffed into wherever they will fit. What is your opinion?
I agree with them on that, and I really think that our zoning and our bylaws need a big-time overhaul. We need to fix it. We need to make sure that this doesn't happen anymore. I mean, I've seen where they're taking down single-family homes and throwing in 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 duplexes in that one area where there was a single-family home. And we need to fix this. We need to do an overhaul of our bylaws and our zoning laws and fix it. It needs to be fixed before it gets, I mean, it's already basically out of hand, but we really need to fix it before it's way out of hand.
All right, thank you. We'll actually start off with Doreen again. Person asked, UMass Lowell and the state was given the Middlesex Training School with the idea that it would be kept as is. Now it's to be a huge development. what are your thoughts on that and other type of developments?
Well, again, we're back to the MBTA. That's where they want to zone the MBTA thing. They keep saying that they're zoning it there because it's already been deemed for this bit development that they're going to be putting there, and it can't be developed. My question is, why zone it if they're not going to build it? Come on, if you're going to zone it, they're going to build it. I mean, why would the state ask you to zone something if they're not going to ask you to build it?
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Deidre.
Well, at the very beginning of the process of putting in place and finessing the MBTA district law, so we actually approached the state and with our development agreement for the MBTA to see if it would be accepted in terms of compliance with the MBTA zoning. We had the plan of the developers, which was supported by the vast majority of the neighbors, and also enabled us to put in place not only a development, but also much-needed senior housing. And the development was also providing the sewage. So it seemed like a win-win that we would be adhering to MBTA and getting senior housing and getting more housing.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go to Paul.
I agree with Deidre. What was the question, though? What was?
Yeah, it was UMass Lowell and the state was given the Middlesex Training School with the idea it would be kept as is. Now it's to be a huge development. To make it a question, I asked, what are your thoughts on this project and other projects?
I thought that the Trammell Crow developers were excellent, actually. They reached out to every possible neighbor affected. They met with them. They met all their concerns, and then it went to town meeting for a vote. And I'm pretty sure it was overwhelming vote that the town was good with this project. So if the town's good with it, I'm good with it.
Excellent. Christopher?
So the original agreement between state and UMass is not really in our purview. But since it was sold, the town looked at it as a potential area where we knew the MBTA zoning was coming down the pipe. And we took a look at it and said, these are the areas that we do need some senior affordable housing. So let's take advantage of the land that we have in town. Let's take advantage of some of the development that might happen, and let's find a place where we can develop senior affordable housing.
Excellent. All right, we're going to move the segment to candidate questions. I guess we'll start off with Christopher and have him ask a question of one of your fellow candidates and go from there. It's going to be a 30-second answer.
Okay, Doreen.
Yep.
If we do not comply with the MBTA law, the state has already said that they're going to withdraw grant funding related to at least 13 specific grants, possibly more, and pursue litigation. The current estimates is that the town could lose upwards of $500,000 to $800,000 in those grants and pay legal fees upwards of $100,000. We're going into what many expect to be a very challenging fiscal year. What departments, services, or people would you cut to cover these costs?
If we agree to the MBTA thing, it's going to cost us $37,500,000 a year to educate the children that these housings will bring in. Yes, it will. There's $20,000 to educate a child in this town. If you bring in 1,800 kids, you're going to be spending $37,500,000 a year to educate those children. So that amount of money that we're going to lose in grants is nothing compared to what it's going to cost taxpayers for schools, for police, for fire,
Thank
for
you.
education.
Can anyone respond?
Can we respond to that? Because,
We'll do a quick 30-second. We'll do a 30-second rebuttal.
okay. There's some incorrect information in there because we're talking about zoning, we're not talking about building. There's no projects that are going to be happening in those areas. We picked those specific areas so that we wouldn't have that type of impact into the town.
Like I said, you zone it, they're going to build it. And for one thing, it's not supposed to be age restricted. MBTA, to be MBTA compliant, you cannot have age restricted housing.
All right, thank you, Doreen. All right, Doreen, we'll give you the floor to ask one of your fellow candidates a question.
Okay, back to you, Chris. It's not supposed to be age restricted. How is that compliant?
The zoning that we're looking to pass is not age restrictive. There is no requirement from the state that says the underlying developers or houses that are in there cannot be age restrictive. So we are complying with the law. We are not restricting by age. It's the community's agreement that are there now that are restricting.
Okay. We'll go to Deirdre. We'll have you ask a question of your fellow candidates.
Chris, you have been serving as a liaison to the Conservation Commission in the last year, and we've had a number of large, complicated projects that have had a kind of an overlap in the issues of aquifer protection and stormwater, and so we've kind of had an opportunity to look up close at how we can, at the issues that overlap, and we want to protect our resources, but we also want to, like, stay in our lane. So I'm wondering if, as the liaison, if you've seen opportunities that we could template participation and collaboration between the two boards and kind of streamline the process so that businesses don't feel that we're capricious in our reviewing their projects.
Yep. So last year, we had a subgroup of planning board, conservation, DPW, community development director, water departments, and the Board of Health. We all got together to talk about where there are overlaps. We had a really good initial meeting. We have committed to continue that work to see where we can overlap and where we can collaborate more on these projects. And we hope to continue that soon. Just
Okay.
got sidetracked with a couple big projects in the MBTA.
Thank you. All right, Paul, we will give you one opportunity to ask a question of your fellow candidate.
I guess for Chris, we went through the policies and procedures this term. How often do you think we should go through that and start making changes? Is it a term thing, or is it continual?
I think it's periodic. Since we just went through the policies, I think a large review is not needed. I do think we need to go through the procedures and bylaws next. That's going to be a bigger lift. And then when we do see a place where we could improve the policies, I think we need to be better and proactive at looking at those individually rather than waiting for a comprehensive review.
Excellent. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We're at the end of the planning board session, and what we'd like to do is have a quick and succinct ending statement so we can move on to select board and still make our evening here. So Doreen, if you'd start at your end and we'll work our way down this way, please give it about less than a minute if you could. Thank you.
I want to thank you again. I'm reaching out to the people of Chelmsford. I know that everybody's against me on this MBTA thing, but I have done a lot of study on it. I've talked with a lot of lawyers. I've talked with a lot of towns that are fighting this and that are saying no on it. I've got a paper here from Sterling, Massachusetts, and from Milton. And they're saying about the Attorney General that she is intellectually dishonest, that she refuses to acknowledge the clear language of the statute providing that the only penalty for the so-called MBTA communities failing under Chapter 48, Section A, deciding not to adopt such bogus zoning districts is the cutoff of funding enumerated in Section 3A(b). There is no provision in that statute for injunction performance relief. So please, give me your vote. I will fight for you. I will fight for this town, and I will fight the state on this stupid MBTA thing that they're trying to push on us. They're trying to take our zoning away. Don't let them do it.
Thank you. And Deidre, please.
I'm Deirdre Conley. I'm running for a re-election to the planning board. I don't feel like the work I want to do is yet complete. I have, I believe, offered a sensible I listen to the neighborhoods, I listen to all the arguments, and I make an informed and sensible decision. And I'd like to ask for another opportunity to continue to do this work.
Thank you. And Paul, please.
My name is Paul McDougall, and I also ask for your vote. And I'm just one of those children that are here to guard what the sires have won. And I believe in that wholeheartedly. And I do, anything I do, I always keep in mind what's best for this community. And that's all it is. And I do believe we need to comply with state law. Just like 40B, they have the hammer.
Thank you. And Chris, please.
Thank you to the moderators, Sam, Joe, and Brian, for hosting this event with the committees. Thank you to WCAP and Chelmsford Telemedia. Thank you for those in attendance and for those watching at home or on the radio. Thank you to Deirdre, Doreen, Paul, for an engaging discussion tonight. I am Chris LaValle. I am running again for a seat on the planning board, and I would respectfully ask for one of your 3 votes on April 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
All right, we are, believe it or not, we are right on time. And I'm now going to ask the candidates for the Select Board to come down and join us. And while they are doing that, a little housekeeping. You're tuned to 980 WCAP. We'll be back in 60 seconds. Come on down, Select Board. All right, by now, the Select Board knows how we're going to determine the order of speaking. We had a dozen questions for planning board. We had exactly enough questions for
What do you got me there, Brian?
Should have one on both sides. Does that work?
fill out the questionnaires.
Thank you, sir. Tight spot. Thank you, guys.
Move over, Pat.
All right, gentlemen, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10. What number? You say 7. George? What number? 4. Pat?
7. Oh, 7, I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
3. The number is 7. So you will be first there. Aaron will be first. Once again, please, by the way, Republican and Democrat look at every question before it's given to the moderator. So again, a round of applause for that. We've been going through it, so we should be back. You're tuned to 980 WCAP if you're listening on the radio. If you're looking at something without a picture, that's the radio. If you're watching television, this is coming to you courtesy of Chelmsford Telemedia. I'm Sam Polden along with my sidekick, Donald Duck right now. But it's my honor and pleasure to introduce our 2 moderators, 1 Republican and 1 Democrat, because you are tuned to Chelmsford's joint Democratic-Republican debate. Joe Reddy, Brian Latina. Joe?
All right, we have the main event here with the Select Board. Coming up on April 2nd, you'll have the opportunity to vote for 2 members of the Select Board. We have 3 candidates, Aaron Cunningham, George Dixon Jr., and Patrick Maloney. We will give you your opportunity to open up. Did you do a selection?
Yes, we did a selection. Aaron is first.
Aaron will start us off, and
1 minute.
1 minute, please. Oh, 1 minute.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in on telemedia or WCAP, and I'd like to thank the town committees and our moderators for hosting tonight. I think this is hugely important for everybody to know who they're voting for, and these debates have definitely been enlightening for me, so I appreciate it. So again, my name's Aaron Cunningham. I'm running for the Select Board. Some of you may consider me a newer resident at only six years, but we've been a part of this community for 20 years. Many of you probably know my wife, who's been a longtime teacher, or have children that have gone to school with my children, who started here back way when the Lions Pride was initially inaugurated in town. So even though we didn't live here, we've been a part of this community and in the school system for those 20 years. I'm currently a town meeting rep. I've served on a couple of other boards, currently serving on the Strategic Planning Committee, which I think is going to be a great opportunity for us to kind of start bringing things bringing the things in the town together. So my time is up. I hate the timer. I'll pass it off to Pat.
All right, thank you. Pat Maloney, please.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Maloney. I'm a candidate for the Chelmsford Select Board, and I want to thank the Republican and Democratic town committees for hosting this important debate. Thank you to CAP, WCAP, and Chelmsford Telemedia as well. I've been in Chelmsford for a while. I moved here in 1971. I'm a 1979 graduate of Chelmsford High School. I raised my family here, my 3 kids. All graduated Chelmsford High School and have gone on to great things, and so they were well served by our schools here. So Chelmsford holds a real special place in my heart. I've owned and managed my Chelmsford-based construction management company, providing advanced technology facilities for large corporations for over 34 years. I've saved Chelmsford taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars by volunteering management services to the town on various public construction projects over a 20-year period. I understand fiscal constraints and restraint and how to make progress in the face of diversity. I've worked with all the town departments and state representatives on a volunteer basis for the town's benefit. One of my proudest moments was being able to return $17 million to the town by lobbying the state for reimbursement for our school projects during a moratorium. I understand government, how to communicate effectively with everyone, and how to get the job done. I will look out for the taxpayers so we can maintain our cherished quality of life in Chelmsford without having to sacrifice our town services.
Thank you. All right, George Dixon Jr., please.
Good evening. I'd like to, my name is George Dixon, and I'd like to thank the radio station, Mr. Polton, and both the Republican and the Democratic town committees, and everybody here that's in the audience for coming out, and you've done it's been a great night so far. Hopefully we can continue. I'm a candidate for a re-election to the Board of Selectmen. I'm running for my 6th term as a member of the Select Board. I've lived here my whole life, and I'm 3rd generation of the Dixon family in the town of Chelmsford. I raised my own family with my late wife, Terry, of 56 years, and we had 2 children, John and Kerry, who also attended. We've all attended the Chelmsford school system, and we're very happy and proud of it. I'm asked almost every day why I'm running, and the answer is simple. I have lived in this town my entire life, and I love the community, the history, and most of all, helping people who live here. My experience extends beyond Select Board. I have been a town meeting rep since I can remember, and served as a liaison between the town and the Lowell RTA.
5 seconds, Rich.
Transit Authority, Permanent Building Committee, 3 water departments, capital planning. Major initiatives being included, major fundraiser for the turf fields, and I helped residents of various developments in town to save their developments and improve.
Okay.
So I would thank you.
Thank you, George. All right, we're going to kick off questions, and Mr. Latina here to start it off.
Thank you for running. Just as a side comment, these are volunteer positions, and we have fantastic candidates that we should certainly applaud. So, gentlemen, thank you, and the other committees as well. Start this off with a good one. We have squatters and people in blue tarp tents living in Chelmsford. As a select board member, and I'll start with you, Aaron. As a select board member, what is your plan to remediate and enforce the law and protect taxpayers' rights?
Thank you for the question, Brian. Yes, I'm aware of the squatters over there behind the Walmart, but I think what you're going to get out of me through this entire campaign, and hopefully when I'm on the board, is transparency and honesty, and I currently do not know enough. I do know that people need to be homed. I do know that it's a problem over there, and I do think it needs to be a priority that we do what we can to solve the problem, and we work within the law to solve that problem.
And George, please, could you respond to that? I can read it
Yeah.
again if you like.
I'm well aware of them. I don't agree that they should be allowed here. I do. I feel badly for them. In the beginning, instead of having them leave town and bringing to a facility somewhere, they were trying to bring people over to help them, and talk to them and keep as they stayed there. And I'm against it because what it's done is it allowed more and more people to come to the town. We have them all over the town now, and it's terrible burden on the public safety, particularly the police department, and a lot of the neighborhoods. They've infiltrated a lot of the neighborhoods. We have all the, and now it's gone into, they've gone into taking up all our, and the motels are all filled up with the migrant people as well as some of those people. I have nothing against them, God bless them, but it's not good for our town. It's cost us a lot of money, and it's taken a lot of our time.
Thank you, George. And Patrick, please.
Brian, would you repeat
Yes.
the question, please?
We have squatters and people in blue tarp tents living in Chelmsford. As a select board member, what is your plan to remediate and enforce the law and protect taxpayers?
Okay, well, I'm not sure what law we're talking about here, but this is my feeling on the situation. And my office and my commercial property is directly adjacent to that area. So I've dealt with some of these folks at various times, and I understand that we have a person in town that works for the town that goes out and meets with these people. So this is a multifaceted situation to deal with this group. For me, a welcoming and safe environment should be available to all. Unfortunately, we deal with more than just homelessness here. Some of it's mental health issues that these people deal with, where they won't accept help. They don't want to come in. They don't want to be in a home. They're out there because they're suffering from other mental health issues. So it's a multifaceted problem. How we deal with it on the board is we have to work with local law enforcement to make sure first and foremost that these people are safe and not a danger to the community. But beyond that, we need to find ways to help these people either through mental health initiatives or just trying to find homes for them and work with them in that
Okay.
area. So.
Thank you. Did everybody get a chance to answer that? Okay. All right, we're going to move in a different direction. What can you bring to the table to enable the select board to offer creative ideas and fresh perspectives for its constituents? And I'll start with Aaron here.
Me again?
Yeah, please.
Well, so I've never served on the select board before, so I think that perspective in and of itself is definitely going to bring some new things. But I have spent the better part of 25 years in business going out and acquiring distressed or undervalued businesses and building them up into something bigger that then is turned around and resold. So I've spent my career analyzing and understanding where there's value to be had or where there's improvement to be had or operational excellence to be had. And I'd like to bring those skills to the board, and again, as a newer resident in town, I think I bring a perspective of those that have recently joined the community, even though I still claim roots of 20-plus years.
Excellent, thank you. We'll actually move to George, and then,
Will you repeat that?
yeah, so what can you bring to the table to enable the select board to offer creative ideas and fresh perspectives for its constituents?
Well, as you know, I've been encouraged, I've been trying to encourage a lot more people to get involved in a lot of different ways, and this would be a great one to get involved with. We just there's too much apathy in this town, and we just don't have people who care enough about a lot of our problems. I would go to people who were professionals in certain areas and ask for support. I mean, I don't know all the answers, and I'm not afraid to go and ask questions to people who may know the answers and how they can best provide help and relief for us and the rest of the people in town. I would try to meet with as many groups in town, various fraternal organizations, and discuss it
Okay.
and listen to ideas.
Thank you, George. Patrick?
Yeah, so, as we go forward, we're gonna be faced with some very difficult budget challenges in the next few years. We haven't seen them yet like our neighboring towns, because our town manager made some good decisions with the use of ARPA funds and things like that. But we're going to be faced with some really critical items coming down the pike here as we move through the next several years. A lot to do with AI and how business and towns and infrastructure is going to be worked upon. So it's going to take some thinking out of the box, and I think it's going to take a lot of listening and collective reasoning with the residents to try to determine where Chelmsford wants to go and what Chelmsford wants to be, in as much as we're not a farming community anymore. We're not a Burlington either. But so what are we, and where do we want to go? That's the question.
Thank you. It's hard to keep track of y'all. George, could I start with you, please?
Why not?
Okay. One of the most pressing issues for the Select Board over the next 3 years, should you be elected again?
I think definitely in the beginning, it's definitely going to be finance, and we're going to have to make some very, very difficult decisions, according to all the reports that are coming out of the State House now and the governor's office. And right now, we have $23 million in the stabilization fund, but our local towns are not as lucky as we are. However, if we spend all that money, we're going to be in the same shape they are. Like Westford's going for an $8 million override. Drake is asking for 3 consecutive overrides in the next 3 years. I believe Billerica just came out publicly and said that they were in financial difficulty. So I think we're going to have to, I think the board is going to have to sit down and make some tough cuts, some tough decisions. It reverts back to the first year I was on the board in 2009, when a lot of the unions, the police union #1 came in and said they didn't want raises. Then the DPW came out and said the same thing. So the people in town were very cooperative, and I believe that we probably won't be able to. People are retiring. We probably would have to take a slow time replacing them, or not replacing them at all, until we kind of find out exactly where we're going financially. I think that's our biggest problem, and as well as our infrastructure capacity, our sewer we're at full capacity. So trying to raise money, but development is going to be a difficult situation as well.
Thank you. And Patrick, please.
I believe you asked what the three...
3 most pressing issues for the Select Board over the next 3 years.
Okay, so first and foremost, it's going to be the budget, right? Because we know it's coming, and what do you cut? You know, how do you increase revenues, all the terms that we use to try to figure that out, right? So I don't know what you'd cut. You know, we've been level service funded for a long time in town, and so we're still trying to creep our way back from that. The other things are planning board issues that are coming up, like MBTA zoning, as well as the new law coming through the House, I forget, House Bill 4138, which is accessory dwelling units, which would essentially render single-family housing in Massachusetts obsolete. So that is potentially another problem, and along with that, we have a couple of big projects that we're going to be contemplating, a school project and some fire projects, all of which are in my wheelhouse because of my past experience with the town.
Great, thank you. And Aaron, please.
Thank you. It's going to be hard for me to challenge or say something different than Pat. I do agree that the budget should always be top of priority for us. It's one of the bigger things that we're going to do. I don't necessarily think it's all doom and gloom at the moment. I just think tough choices are coming, and I'm ready to make those choices for the town. Growth is definitely something that is important to me. Again, I don't want Chelmsford to lose its charm or character. However, growth is coming, so my philosophy is we can fight it and not get what we want, or we can embrace it and manage it and control it. And then finally, I know my time is up, but I also think we need to continually be looking to ways to raise revenue that are not additional taxes on businesses and homeowners. I'd like to see some of the empty square footage in town get filled up with tax-paying businesses, new revenue, not revenue from existing people.
Thank you. And if we could start with Aaron this time. In the previous candidate forum with the CBA, one candidate mentioned needing to think out of the box with respect to town budget challenges, kind of as a piece of what we've just asked the question on. Where specifically would you take action, Aaron, and where would you start looking in the budget? With which departments or areas would you look at first from a cost savings point of view?
So in all fairness, other than high-level budget, from a town meeting rep perspective where I review the budget, as Pat has said and I've said before, there's not necessarily any one thing that I would say, hey, this is a passion project of mine. This is where I think we're gonna need to cut. And again, being part of my background, managing expenses and getting the most out of the money we spend as efficiently as possible is where I look for things. So I do think I'm uniquely situated to look at the line items, ask those difficult questions of those department heads, to go for the things that we need to have versus the nice to have.
Could you give me one specific budget item? Where specifically would you take action?
Again, if I gave you an answer on that, Brian, I'd be making something up. So
Okay.
I think that that's fair to the voters.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And George, please.
I feel as though we may have some excessive employees, maybe some that are maybe not as important. You know, everybody's important, but I mean, we don't need them as much as we need others. So I think we have to meet with each department head and go over all of them and kind of rate it and see just how much. First of all, we're going to find out how much we're going to cut, and then we'll find out where to begin, how much we're going to take, and try to find the least important departments and take a hard look and then work our way up. But, I mean, you can't do it with public safety. Public safety is stretched now as it is with these people on the street, and we're having a lot of retirements. The retirements would be maybe not to fill the people who are retiring in the other areas that aren't as important. But I guess we'd all have to sit down and determine which are the most important positions and where we can at least afford to lose somebody and make some hard cuts. You know, the people are not going to be happy, but that's not what we get paid to do,
Okay.
I guess.
Any specific department or group It says, where specifically would you take action?
Well, I certainly wouldn't want to go after the seniors, but there are a lot of some of these new services that we're trying to provide that maybe we don't need to. We're spending a lot of money and we're not charging any money for them. And we definitely need to help certain people, but I don't know if we need to help. It's a very difficult question. It's a tough answer, but
Okay, thank you. And Patrick?
So I see this as a multifaceted approach. I don't want to start out by saying, what are we going to cut? I'd rather start out by doing some brainstorming with the rest of the committee to see if there's ways we can raise revenue, different things that we might be able to allow in town that we haven't in the past. So I would look at revenues first. I think from there, typically what happens is when you get to these types of situations with town budgets, and because we have been level service funded for so long, unfortunately it comes from labor, and I think that's where you end up is with cuts in labor when it gets desperate. So for me, I wouldn't pick one group or another. It would have to kind of be across the board. But unfortunately, that's the reality of the situation if it gets desperate enough.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We'll start with Patrick. When you cite your accomplishments as part of the candidate platform, can you specifically elaborate on whether you did these things single-handedly or part of a team? What specifically was your role?
Well, everything I've done has been part of a team. I'm a great team player. One of our good team members is sitting in the back row up on the right there that I've worked a lot with over the years, doing many projects in town. And so, no, it takes a village and it's a lot of teamwork. So, I'll talk about like the $17 billion project. Dr. Moser, Bernie Lynch, and I went in and we lobbied the State House, we lobbied MSBA, Catherine Cryer, and so on. We weren't guaranteed any reimbursement. We were just told, try to frame it in the right way. And that was my job. So, I have assistance from administrations and various departments that we worked with. However, a lot of it, it was my turn to take over and move the projects forward and bring them in on time and on budget.
Excellent. We'll come to Aaron.
Repeat the question, please.
Yeah, that's a good question.
That might have been a direct one.
yeah, that's something.
When you cite accomplishments as part of your candidate platform, can you specifically elaborate on whether you did these things single-handedly or as part of a team? What specifically was your role?
I definitely like the team aspect of that question. So I've been very fortunate to lead teams of varying sizes throughout my career. And I definitely view things as a team. I don't rule autocratically. I don't always get the last say. And it's been an adjustment working as an independent consultant versus working on a team because I don't necessarily have somebody to collaborate with all the time or bounce ideas off of all the time. I think that's why being a candidate on the select board with the people that are going to be on the board or that are on the board, it's going to be the right group of people for me to work with to help lead this town going forward.
Excellent. George, you need me to repeat it?
Well, some of the things that I've worked on have always been with a team. Whether you start out individually, but you always have to bring other people in because nobody knows all the answers to all the questions. Some of the big things that I've been involved in, in Williamsburg, it took us about 6 years, but we saved the riverbank and saved the sewer system from eroding into the river. And finally, I think it was just last year, Jimmy Lane came on the board and he helped me tremendously, and the conservation people helped us. Mr. Cohen obviously helped us a little bit, and it took about 6 years, but we saved that, and we probably saved them millions of dollars, plus they saved a lot of the units. Same thing with Scotty Hollow.
5 seconds, George.
Scotty Hollow was, they were in dire need of electricity. They had problems, they had brownouts every night. In the middle of the summer, I was getting calls at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. And so I got together with National Grid.
All right, I got to cut you off, George.
And that one,
Thank
pardon?
you. I got to cut you off. Overtime. All right. We got to move on to a new question. Do you support the town manager, and is there room for improvement? I'll start with Patrick.
Any position, there's always room for improvement. I think Paul served the town well, and he continues to do so, with a AAA rating being the highest the town can earn, all without doing any overrides like our neighboring communities who might have a AAA, somebody like Concord, but they've done overrides, and so they've provided more funding in ways of, in various ways. We've not done that. We've got a AAA rating that helps our borrowing. So as we move forward to look at school projects, fire projects, any of that type of thing, which is almost an oxymoron, we're talking about budget crunches coming, but we're going to have to look at these things, and the fact that Paul has positioned the town to take advantage of opportunity is a good thing.
All right, thank you. Aaron?
You know, I definitely agree. Part of the reason why I'm running for select board is I'm very satisfied with the fiscal responsibility and management of the town that Paul has had. We have the right amount of money in the rainy day fund. I think we're well positioned to weather some of the challenges coming up. I will always be critical of an employee in their performance review, so I don't have any problems challenging Paul, but I do think we're going to need some of his expertise and his knowledge of the State House and his experience in budgeting in these next coming years. So I look forward to working with him.
Okay. George?
Well, I've worked with him for 15 years. We've just given him probably his final contract. But there were many times when Paul and I disagreed with a lot of things, and you know, I made a lot of enemies in town because you know, Paul has a lot of friends. He's a very competent guy, but I think he was a little bit lax with the public safety of people, particularly with the police union, and it ended up costing the town about $300,000 or $400,000 extra in legal fees, and it also split the town right in half, which is never a good thing. But I mean, to judge him overall, I think he's good. I mean, I can call him at any time and talk to him. He's
All right.
And,
Thank you, George.
Okay. You each were asked to prepare a question for another candidate. And if I could, Patrick, would you ask one of the other candidates a question?
Sure. George, you've been on the board for 15 years. What's different this upcoming term?
I think this coming term, I think we have probably the most difficult fiscal challenge in the history, and I'm confident that with hard work and a lot of grinding and we'll overcome. We can overcome it, but it's going to be it's a very difficult challenge. I don't think there's any question about it, and it's probably the worst year in this will be the worst year in 16 years for me if I do get elected.
And,
Most difficult, I'm sorry, not the worst year, but the most difficult year.
Thank you. Aaron, question to another candidate, please.
Pat had the opportunity to ask me an interesting question at the last one, so I'd like to ask him this time around. So I didn't have any big campaign events. I've had a lot of one-on-ones. I've had a lot of coffee with a lot of people, and become very energized for running for this position, just in what people are shown concern and what they're trusting me with by coming to meet me and offering me their vote. So as you've campaigned and talked with people, what's been one or two of the most interesting things you've learned from our constituency?
Oh, gosh, we've talked about so many things, from MBTA zoning to schools to, public safety and such. So we've covered the gambit. I find that most people just want to maintain a good quality of life in Chelmsford is what it's about. I think people don't want to see a lot of development. I think people want to control development and redevelopment. So this is what I'm hearing out there. They like where we are today. They like where we've come from, and they'd like to see us kind of maintain that quality of life in as much as is possible in today's day and age.
Thank you. And George, please. Question to one of the other candidates.
Okay, Aaron, I'd just like to know what you have for new and creative ideas. And we probably banged this around a little bit, but if it's a little redundant.
No, I appreciate the question, George. So, again, I don't think it's necessarily a new and creative idea, but I think it's very, very important if we want to maintain what we have in town that we embrace these things. We define what we want them to be, and we enact the rules and the laws, and we elect the people that are going to go ahead and do that for us. So again, I don't believe that we need to, kick and scream and fight on zoning. I think we need to work with the planning board to get the right zoning in so that we have what we want. So I think that that's one area. I feel very passionate about, we've discussed raising newer revenues. I want to find ways to make us more welcoming to the right small to medium businesses to fill the 6 or 8 million square feet that we have available in town, because every new business is new revenue. It's not additional revenue from existing people, so I think that that's really important. And we have some very big projects coming up. I do support the school project on the surface. I definitely look forward to working with the board, the school committee board, to investigate that further. So those are the things that I'm looking to really accomplish in the coming years. Thank you, George.
Thank you.
And Aaron, if you could, how's the town dealing with undocumented immigrants? And this is real quick, just a quick answer. Good, bad, or not at all? Undocumented immigrants in Chelmsford.
I know that we're housing.
Good, bad, or not at all?
Not at all, I guess.
Thank you. And Patrick?
None of those answers are appropriate. So
Okay.
I would say none of those, none of the
Okay.
above.
George?
I'm not comfortable answering either way. I wouldn't say it was great, but I don't have any specifics.
Thank you. Okay. Yep. And we have a question. Would you consolidate the 3 water districts to one district in order to save money? It's a yes or no question. George?
No way possible.
No. And Pat?
Kept independent, I would consolidate.
And Aaron?
Consolidation would make sense, I think, from an efficiency standpoint.
Okay. And one to stretch your minds a little bit and give you some perspective. If you could go back in time to meet your ancestors, or forward in time to meet your descendants, what would you do? Aaron?
Ooh, I'd like to go forward in time and
Forward.
see what happened.
Pat?
I have a pretty good sense of my history, so I guess I'd like to look forward, because the future is exciting, and there's going to be major changes coming very quickly, and that's why, one of the reasons I want to run for the board, because I see them coming during.
And George, ancestors or descendants?
Ancestors, actually. I'd like to go back and thank them all for bringing up a great family that we've had, and a family I've enjoyed very much. And
Thank you. And we're wrapping up. 1 minute. Please ask for a vote. There's a camera back at the top of the room back there. Ask the folks in this room and the camera. Aaron, please, first.
Again, I'd like to thank both town committees and the audience for submitting questions today, and to all of you that I've met in the last couple of weeks, and to those of you I hope to meet in the coming weeks. I have been energized by what you've asked of me and the questions you've challenged me on, and the things that you want me to address going forward if elected. So come on out April 2nd. It's really important. These votes come down to one vote. Every single vote counts, so you have a choice on April 2nd. 2 choices for select board, and I'm hoping to get one of those votes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Patrick, please.
Well, thank you to the Republican and Democratic town committees for having this important debate. For my part, everyone brings their own leadership style and skills to the board. I'm a worker. It's what I've done for the town for over 20 years. If elected to the select board, I'll bring a wealth of experience, dedication, and passion for our town's well-being. I'll work collaboratively sorry, with fellow board members, town officials, and residents to address the issues facing our community, prioritize transparency and accountability, and make decisions that best reflect the interests of all Chelmsford residents. I'm not just asking for your vote. I'm asking for your partnership in building a better Chelmsford that we can all be proud of. It's for these reasons and more that I respectfully ask for one of your 2 votes for Select Board on April 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you. And George, please.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you, the radio station and both parties for, and the local television for, and I'd like to thank everybody that came out tonight that has an interest in this, to prove that you do have an interest in town. I've been 15 years on a board. I'm looking to get reelected. I'm very transparent, and I'm a very approachable person. My biggest thing is that I've dealt with people individually and their problems. If they come to me, and if I can't help them, I'll go to somebody who can, and we'll find a way to get things done. That was my motto one time, that we got things done, and I just hope that I get an opportunity to do it again, so I ask for one of your 2 votes on April 2nd. And I love the town of Chelmsford, and just, if everybody votes, that'll be a big win. Thank you.
Thank you. A big round of applause for our candidates. Before too much time goes by, can't we all be proud of what someone just said? I would like to thank the Republican Town Committee and the Democratic Town Committee for presenting this debate. See, we can get things done when we work together. So a round of applause for our Republicans in the audience and for our Democrats in the audience. Also, I think we can all be proud of Chelmsford. There's certainly something special going on here when we can have 7 people put their names, put their hats in the ring, their lives on hold, and only want to do things that will make the town better. So again, big round of applause for those candidates. For those of you that don't see a picture and are listening to the radio, you're tuned to 980 WCAP. For everybody else, we thank Chelmsford Telemedia. We have about 3 minutes. I am not used to finishing early. I think that was great. So let's have a huge round of applause for our dual moderators, Joe Reddy and Brian Latina. And I refrained from asking my favorite question of the school committee, but I already know how they feel, and I hope everybody in this room feels that Chelmsford is blessed with 2 high schools, and I encourage you to take a look at all the fantastic projects that are being turned out at Chelmsford High and right up the road at Neshoba Tech. So again, a round of applause for that. This program will be repeated many times, but next Wednesday at 7, it will be re-aired on 980 WCAP. Please, it is very important to get out and vote. Registration ends March 22nd, so you still have a few days if you haven't registered to vote. And then we are in election season, so don't stop with the town elections. Get out there and vote. We'll be having an election in September, and then the big one, of course, in November. Once again, thank you all for tuning in, listening in, and especially for coming down tonight. Thank you very much.